It wasn't their job to make friends with each other. Basin said, "I've spoken to the family and they are willing to accommodate us." He continued, "Outwardly, however, I am the one here to ask the questions. You are my attendant." Maomao thought, very well. This was ideal, even better than she expected. They arrived at the house. Maomao followed Basin obediently. When they knocked on the door, a man of around 20 years old appeared. "I heard you were coming," he said. Despite his dark demeanor, he ushered Maomao and Basin into the house politely. Inside, the home felt much the same as it looked from the outside, tidy and well maintained. Small flower arrangements were placed in various spots. In a recess in one wall was an unusual object. It appeared to be a chunk of rock ornamented with metal. The metal seemed to shine with a faint bluish hue. Maomao studied the object intently. "Oh, that thing," the sullen man said, coming over to her. "Father bought that when he was getting some materials. He always had a soft spot for strange things." For the first time, a hint of joy entered the man's face. They left the main house and proceeded down a covered walkway. Near a building Maomao thought was a small workshop, they found two more men. One man was tall and one was a bit round. Both looked as morose as the first man. Their host said, "Here they are, dear elder brothers." Maomao guessed their guide was the youngest brother, based on his respectful tone. He was at least polite. His two siblings looked quite hostile. When Maomao and Basin approached, they finished a quick conversation and showed the visitors into the workshop. The workshop interior was pleasant. All the tools were neatly in their places. The men told Maomao and Basin that the real workshop was in the main house. They hadn't used this place for quite some time. Now it was a repository of old tools. The craftsmen sometimes took tea there. "What an odd arrangement," Basin said, looking around the room. Maomao silently agreed. A chest of drawers stood in the middle of the space. It looked like it could be in the way, but a closer look revealed delicate decorations. The overall shape was not quite like anything Maomao had ever seen. It seemed rather at the forefront of furnishing fashion. It nearly made the chest look good, sitting there in the middle of everything. Tables were set up around it and the whole arrangement was surprisingly unified. The corners of the chest were nicely rounded, with worked metal adornments on them. The topmost of the 3 rows of drawers had keyholes. The center drawer also had a keyhole, and each one was accented with a different metal. The plump brother came over to Maomao. She was studying the chest intently. He said in a quiet voice, "You are welcome to look, but keep your hands off." She dipped her head in acknowledgement and took a step back. She recalled that the dead craftsman's will included a bequest of furniture to the second oldest son. Was this the piece they were discussing? That would mean her conversation partner was the second son himself. Her idea was soon confirmed. The youngest son approached, holding something clear and round. "Do you truly believe you can understand these things our father left for us?" The tall man, probably the eldest son, asked Basin. Basin glanced at Maomao, who nodded and pointed her head toward the 3 brothers. She wasn't sure if he understood her. He looked at the young men and replied calmly, "I'm afraid I won't be able to say until I've heard a little more." Then he sat down in a chair. Maomao stood behind him, taking the opportunity for a fresh look around the room. The architecture really is strange, she thought. For one thing, the window was in an unusual place. It was uncommonly tall, perhaps intended for a Western style. This would allow more than ample sunlight into the room. There was just one problem. The giant chestnut tree outside blocked all the light. Only light that could filter past its leaves made it into the room, except in one particular spot. She could tell this by the faded color of the shelf hanging from the wall. There was a square space still in the original color, betraying that something must have sat there for a very long time, until just recently. While Maomao scanned the room, the lanky elder brother entertained Basin. "We've already told you everything there is to know," he said. "Our father departed this world never having told us his deepest secret. Then he left me with this workshop. And me with these drawers," the second son said, slapping the chest demonstratively. "And me, I only have this." The youngest son held out the clear, round thing. Now they could see that it was made of thin glass with a flat bottom. Jinchi had said the youngest son received a goldfish bowl. Maomao hadn't pictured something made of glass. She had imagined something mostly of wood, or at least ceramic. Now she could see each of the sons had received something of some value. Even so, there seemed a clear difference, a chilling distance between what the first two sons received and what the third son received. What is going on here? Maomao looked from one man to the next. Each man had calluses on his hands, showing they were craftspeople, but the hands of the youngest son particularly caught her attention. They had a series of unusual red welts on their skin. Were they burns just starting to heal? The second son sighed and ran his hand along the chest of drawers. I don't know what the old man was thinking. He leaves me this whole chest, but there is only one key, and it doesn't fit any of the locks. Maomao followed the man's gaze to several metal fasteners on the bottom of the chest. It was clearly fastened to the floor. The key seemed to fit the middle drawer, but the man was certain it would not. The other 3 drawers all opened with the same key, a key they did not have. Look at this, the second son said, sounding irritated as he pointed to the fastenings. I can't take this thing anywhere. What am I supposed to do with it stuck in my brother's workshop? The oldest brother nodded, as if he felt the same way. Only the youngest sibling looked unsure. But father said to have tea like we used to, didn't he? The other 2 looked at him as if they'd had this conversation before. Easy for you to say. You are the lucky one. Your bequest is like money in your pocket. Yes, just your luck. Pawn that thing off and it will keep you eating well for a good long time. The 2 older brothers sounded as if they were trying to chase off a mangy dog. Maomao considered things. She gave Basin a gentle tap to urge him to ask another question. He frowned, but he did as he was supposed to do. If I may, he said, turning toward the brothers, could you tell me again about your father's last message to you? One of the older brothers replied, just like the kid said. Another brother added, yeah, have a tea party just like we used to. Whatever that is supposed to mean. Maybe it was encouragement for the 3 of them to get along. It would be very fatherly advice to leave behind. But Maomao had no way to be sure what he meant, nor did she think they were going to get anywhere simply by contemplating the 3 bequests. She was thinking about what to do when the young men's mother came in with a tray. She placed cups of tea for each of them on the long table in the center of the room. Here you are was all she said before she left again. 3 cups were lined up on one side of the long table. 2 more cups were across from them, leaving the space in front of the chest of drawers open. The 2 cups were probably for Maomao and Basin. The brothers sat down but not in the closest seats. They each moved to a particular spot, suggesting they had occupied those seats for a long time. Maomao thought. Light streamed in through the tall window and stretched out toward the chest. The seat in front of it was vacant. Considering the time of day, the sun would have been too bright for anyone to sit there for tea. The sunlight would soon brush the chest, but there was no sign of fading on the wood. It seemed the sun never reached that far down. Were there signs of fading light? Maomao stood up from her seat and looked at the window. With the large tree outside, the light wouldn't fall into the room for very long. She stood in front of the window and peered at the chest of drawers. The lock's position bothered her. It wasn't the keyholes on the 3 top drawers, but the middle row where only one drawer was locked. She moved toward the chest, curious, and received perplexed looks from her siblings. Basin pressed a hand to his forehead and looked down. The gesture was distinctly familiar. Maomao realized with a start that he looked much like Gaeshun. Basin sighed and looked at Maomao with undisguised displeasure. You have found a clue. That drawer with the keyhole won't open, is that right? It used to, but father fiddled around with it enough that now it won't, the second son responded. And there is only one key. This is it. And our old man told us, I suppose you know by now, how he loved to say things that don't quite make sense. He said that if we break the lock, whatever is inside will break as well. So we cannot just go smashing it. Maomao positioned herself in front of the chest and examined the keyhole. She had the impression that something was packed inside. Maybe there is a reason the chest is stuck to the floor too, she thought, turning over what she knew in her mind. The bequests for the 3 brothers were the workshop, the chest, and the bowl. There was also the drawer that wouldn't open. Maomao looked at the youngest brother's goldfish bowl. Excuse me for asking, but did that bowl used to sit on that shelf over there? She said. Why yes, it did. The younger brother walked over to the window while still holding his bowl. He folded a handkerchief and placed it on the faded spot. Then he set the bowl on top of it. He said we used to keep a goldfish here, but the cold would kill it, so in the winter we only put it here at noon when it was warmest. We haven't had a goldfish in years though. This bowl has been nothing but a decoration. He smiled a bit sadly. Maomao gave the arrangement a calculating look, then left the workshop. Hey, where are you going? Basin demanded. Just to get some water, Maomao said. She returned soon after and poured the water into the goldfish bowl. I suppose it once held water like this. Yes, that is correct. The design on the side was always facing us like this, Maomao thought to herself as she looked at the bowl again. Light entered through the window and struck the goldfish bowl. From there the light was focused on a single point. It landed on the chest of drawers, specifically the center lock. The lock glittered in the beam of sunlight. May I further presume this is the exact time of day at which you customarily took tea? Hey, what's going on here? The second oldest brother said. He stepped between the bowl and the chest. Stay back, Maomao shouted more vehemently than she'd meant to. It was effective though. The big man suddenly seemed to become smaller. Pardon me, Maomao said. If the beam gets in your eyes you might go blind, and I need this space to be clear, so please keep your distance. Otherwise the lock won't open. She watched them both closely, the lock and the light, and waited. No one knew exactly how long it took. No one was counting. The light reflected from the goldfish bowl moved bit by bit, working its way around the lock. Finally the light disappeared. Maomao supposed it was blocked by the chestnut tree. Now she inspected the lock critically. The metal was warm to the touch and she detected a strange odor. What's the meaning of this? Someone asked. Maomao replied, only by any chance did the deceased suffer from anemia and stomach aches. Yes, he did, and perhaps you observed vomiting and fits of lethargy. The way the three brothers looked at each other in response to this question convinced Maomao she was on the mark. Then she remembered the strange object, the crystal. I'm not very knowledgeable about metalwork, but was soldering done here as well? Yes, all right. Please open the drawer with the key. I told you it does not fit, the second son grumbled, but he nonetheless slid the key into the lock. It fit very naturally. The man, startled, turned the key and heard a clicking sound. What happened? The eldest son asked while his brothers looked on in amazement. Even Basin appeared suitably impressed. Nothing special, Maomao said. We simply followed your father's last request. You all had tea together just as you used to. Then she removed a drawer from the chest. She set it on the table where everyone could see it. Inside was a key-shaped mold. It was giving off a dull glow. It was striking that the metal was still warm. Maomao tapped the metal with her finger to check its hardness. May I remove this? She asked. Why, yes, sure, the brothers replied. With their consent, she took the key out of the mold, feeling the last of the radiant warmth against her hand. When she tried the key in the chest, it fit neatly into the locks of all three drawers. She opened each drawer in turn, provoking perplexed looks and expressions of surprise. What is this stuff? The first two drawers, which varied in size, contained metal and something that looked like crystal. In the largest drawer was a bluish gem. It looked like the one that had decorated the entryway of the house. I'm afraid I don't know, she said. I've only done as we were told. Maomao shook her head and placed the 3 lumps on the table. There was nothing more for her to say. Damn it, be friendly to each other, he says. Like hell, father just couldn't resist pulling one last prank on us, the elder son exclaimed. He must have been laughing all the way to his grave, said the second son. The third man, though the youngest, was silent as he looked at the 3 lumps. He then studied the drawers of the chest. Maomao saw his hands again and noticed their half-healed burns. His older brothers had no marks on their fingers. Apprentice see, apprentice do, she wondered. She remembered the words being spoken by someone who had visited her father. This person had the unmistakable air of a craftsman. She also remembered taking the advice to heart. She tried to mix the herbs her father had brought, imitating what she thought she had seen him do. Ultimately, she poisoned herself. In the future, her father insisted she should ask him first. Maomao suspected this youngest child was the only one who saw what the old craftsman had been after. Soldering involved mixing several different types of metal together. This allowed them to melt at a lower temperature than normal. Maomao knew of one possible combination, lead and tin. Why did she know this? Because lead was poisonous, of course. She had once seen a metalworker who poisoned himself while melting lead. Then there was the face whitening powder that had been popular in the rear palace. Her father had told her it was lead-based. What if 2 of the 3 lumps of metal were lead and tin? Could mixing them with the 3rd lump create a new metal entirely? The goldfish bowl had focused the light, it is true, but it hadn't done so for very long. The metal's melting point was clearly quite low. And finally, perhaps most importantly, the old craftsman had made the drawers different sizes. It seemed he had done so quite deliberately. Maomao was sure she didn't need to say anything further. However, there was one thing she wanted to add. She walked over and addressed the youngest brother. At an establishment called the Verdigris House in the Pleasure District, there is an apothecary named Liumen. He is a healer of substantial accomplishment. If you ever feel unwell, please let me recommend that you visit him. Ah, yes, thank you, the young man said, surprised by the unsolicited advice. Maomao bowed her head slowly. The youngest brother politely said farewell while the other 2 continued to bicker. Maomao left them all behind. She noticed the look on Basin's face. He seemed no more pleased now than ever. She realized perhaps she had overstepped herself and took up walking behind him. What happened after this did not concern Maomao. It mattered little whether the clever 3rd son chose to be generous or if he kept the hard-won secret to himself. Chapter 6 is called Makeup. Maomao was preparing the evening meal when Jinshi asked, "Do you know much about makeup?" The question seemed to come from nowhere. What in the world is he asking about that for? Maomao thought, not bothering to hide her confusion. She found herself looking at him for the first time in a while, as if she were studying a caterpillar. It was not that she had really meant to. Jinshi had just come back from work. Suhoyen was helping him change clothes. Was this what he wanted to know? It was true that growing up in the pleasure district, one learned the basics of doing makeup by osmosis. Sometimes Maomao concocted cosmetics as well as medicine. She could not deny she had a fair amount of knowledge about the subject. "Do you wish to give some to someone as a gift? You misunderstand. It is for me." That struck Maomao dumb. Her eyes became bottomless black pits, vacant and empty. She no longer even looked like she was gazing at a dead bug or a puddle of mud. "What are you imagining?" Jinshi snapped. Well, what else would she be imagining? Jinshi in makeup. He was the one who had brought it up. He does not need any damn makeup, Maomao thought. He already had the beauty of some denizen of the heavenly realm. A touch of crimson around the eyes, a dab of rouge on the lips, and a flower mark upon his brow would be enough to bring the nation to its knees. History was full of pointless wars. More than a few of them had been caused by a beautiful woman who was too close to the seat of power. And this man, he had the potential to transcend gender entirely. "Do you want to destroy this country?" Maomao asked flatly. "What in the world gave you that idea?" Jinshi exclaimed. He pulled his outer jacket on and sat in a chair. Maomao served him congee from a clay pot. It was made with good, salty abalone. The bite she took to test it for poison was delicious. She knew that when Jinshi was finished, Suhoyen would split the leftovers with her, so she wished he would hurry up and eat before it all went cold. "How do you make that stuff you use?" Jinshi asked, indicating her nose. "Oh." Maomao thought about her freckles. Then the idea came to her. His beauty was already so overwhelming that it needed nothing to enhance it, but perhaps something to blunt it. "I dissolve dry clay in oil, sir. If I want the product to be especially dark, I mix in charcoal or red lip pigment." "And can you do that on short notice?" Maomao produced a clamshell from the folds of her robe. Inside was tightly packed clay. "This is all I have on me right now, but give me a night's time and I can easily make more." Jinshi took the clamshell and scooped up some of the contents with his finger. He rubbed it on the back of his hand. It was rather dark, Maomao thought, for his almost porcelain skin. She would need to thin the mixture. "Will you be using it yourself, sir?" Jinshi chuckled softly. It wasn't a direct answer, but Maomao took it as a yes. "If you know of any medicine that can change a man's face, I would love to hear about it," he said lightly. He was joking, but Maomao replied, "Such things exist, but you would never be able to change back. Lacquer, for instance, would do the job quickly." "I suppose so," Jinshi said with a strained smile. He would not want that, and neither would anyone else around here. Maomao could easily picture herself torn to pieces and fed to the beasts if she dared to do such a thing. There are certain techniques, sir, which might achieve the same effect, she said. If you please, then. Jinchi smiled as if this was what he had been waiting for, and finally set about eating his congee. He was enjoying the perfectly cooked chicken meat so much that Maomao despaired of getting any leftovers. When Surin took the tray away, only a single bite remained on it. I want you to make me someone else entirely, Jinchi said. Maomao wondered what he was planning, but she valued her life more than to ask. She did not have anything to gain by knowing. She only needed to do as she was told. Very well, she said. Then she watched Jinchi continue his dinner, silently urging him to hurry up. That abalone congee looked so good. The next day, Maomao set out a cloth with everything she needed. This included a batch of her makeup thinned down, and a few other items she thought would help.